Anticlimax and Bathos. Now, you know how in a drama play that you've read, you have a build up. You start, and then this exposition, and there's a build up, and things get more and more complicated, and it's working up to what we call a climax. And there's always a certain expectation in terms of that climax, right? Which, in a way, is positive. However, if we talk about an anticlimax, it means that that expectation is not met, and there's a sudden disappointment or a sudden turn of events that changes the whole story, that changes the whole plot. So anticlimax is what we're going to talk about today, basically, and how Bathos is also anticlimax and yet somehow a little bit different. Now, here is just like a humorous little cartoon that illustrates anticlimax very clearly. You have these people in their fancy clothes. It looks as though they're at a ball or something, a very fancy occasion. They've been dressing up for this, and they're walking up these elaborate stairs, and they are feeling extremely important. And they are on their way upstairs. And then when they get to a certain point, which now should be like the place where they're supposed to be going to, suddenly they see that they're not going anywhere. The stairs are not continuing. So there's this abrupt stop and the disappointment. Can you see? The anti-climax. So it is a rhetorical device used in speaking and in writing for a certain effect. And it entails a disappointing situation, as we said, or a sudden transition in discourse, in other words, in what you're saying or what you are reading, suddenly a change in discourse. And it is usually from the important to the unimportant, or to the ludicrous, or to the trivial, right? Expectations they had were important, they felt very important, and now suddenly, they're going to have no show after all, right? So the expectations are raised and everything is built up. Can you see? It's built up to a certain point. But then suddenly something boring or something disappointing happens. It's the first point. Now, I'm going to give you an example of anticlimax, and it's of a certain person, Jones, who takes a girl out to lunch, and he's very impressed with her. Oh, and she speaks so beautifully and so flowery, and he's totally impressed with her. He is mesmerized by her talking. And now we're going to read what she has to say. Oh, let's have sherry rather than brandy by all means. When I sip sherry, it seems to me that I'm transported from the everyday scenes by which I may, at that moment, be surrounded. This, together with the fancied drowsy sound of insects and distant lowing of cattle, brings my mind to a kind of warmth, peace, and serenity, a sort of dovetailing of the world into a beautiful entirety. Brandy, on the other hand, makes me burp. So he's all taken with her speaking, and she's so refined and so well spoken, and then suddenly says, brandy makes her burp. So that's absolutely something that he did not expect. And he now sees that she isn't always as charming as she appears to be. So from the impressive to the less impressive, or less exciting outcome as expected. That should be clear enough. That's anticlimax. Now, bathos is, as I said, it is based on anticlimax. It's actually an effect of anticlimax. It is anticlimax to a certain extent. And we very often get that in literary works. Sometimes it's unintentional that you build up to a certain point and then there is a drop in the mood from the sublime to the ridiculous. Now, the part that you need to remember about bathos is that it is like anticlimax in that there's a build-up and there's a disappointment in anticlimax. There is a build-up in bathos and then a disappointment in bathos. But in the case of bathos, it is from the sublime to the ridiculous. It's really a bit more harsh. It really goes from the fantastic to the absurd or the ridiculous. Now, the previous example that we read is in a way bathos, because I mean, what she says in the end is totally out of sync with the rest of her speech. So it does end up being somewhat ridiculous or absurd to say that makes me burp, whereas Sherry does all these wonderful things for me. So it brings a degree of wit. There is something in bathos because it's so extreme, the sublime and the ridiculous, the difference is so extreme, and it's so quick that it does employ a bit of wit there, so it's quick, and it highlights the contrast in tone. Both anticlimax and bathos, as you can see, includes this word but in its definition. Expected this, but got that. So, as we have explained before, it's ironic. You will have heard about it. There's irony involved. I expected this, but I got something else. So, it's ironic, but the difference is that the irony goes from the sublime to the ridiculous. Another example here is where Mary says, John, once we had something that was pure and wonderful and good. What has happened to it? And his answer is, you spent it all. So can you see there's that quick answer? It's a witty answer, and it's totally different from what she expected. She expected some kind of romantic response, and he said, but you've ruined our relationship because you spent all our money on nonsense. So you get that total difference, build up, and then the total disappointment. It is therefore, the bathos, there's an aspect of absurdity in it, from the sublime to the ridiculous or the absurd. And as we said, it's frequently unintentional. People sometimes do it without even thinking. So let's say, for instance, you have a neighbor and there was a fire in the neighbor, the house caught fire and the house burnt down. And you know that the people told you that they were busy having this lovely lunch that they had prepared, and quite unintentionally, you use bathos, and you say, our neighbors lost everything in the fire, their possessions, their home, and their lunch. It just seems a bit ridiculous or absurd to mention that they lost their lunch when they actually lost all their possessions, nothing left. So it's from the terrible thing that happened to them, losing everything, and also their lunch. So bathos. Here we've got another example. Her hair was finely curled. Her cheeks were lined with rouge. So she's all made up for this occasion, and her dress was flowing green and blue. And even up till this point, you can think of this creature all made up and in this beautiful green and blue dress. And then it ends and it says, which made her look rather like a tired old peacock. So the simile there, is a total surprise, and it's from the sublime. Oh, she's looking so wonderful for her matric farewell or whatever, but she looked like a tired old peacock. The dress, it didn't work somehow. Bathos, right? From there to there. We often get it in cartoons as well. Look at this one, for instance. The girl says, Jordan, and he says, what's up, Holly? My mom wants you to come over for dinner. That already sounds, ooh, it's important. And he says, why? She has this rule. It's very important. It's strict, and she's serious about it. She has this rule that if I want to have a boyfriend, he has to meet the family. And then his response brings about the bathos. He says, so who's your boyfriend? So certainly it's not me, right? I'm not going to your fancy dinner, right? So from the sublime, I'm inviting you. You're my boyfriend. My mother now wants to get close to you, but it's not going to be me, right? Then we have an example in an advertisement. We're just going to look at the bathos. We're not going to look at the actual advertisement, what it's advertising and whether it's effective and so on. We're just going to look at the bathos employed. The text there, the written text of this advertisement says, I watched you from afar in the park. You had me arrested. So it's the two swans looking at each other, and the one swan saying that I actually stalked you before. I've been looking at you for a while. I've been checking you out, and I've liked you a lot. And in the process, oh dear, I got arrested. So it makes use of a pun as well, because the pun here is arrested. You had me arrested. The bathos is that I was longing for you. I was dreaming about you. I was staring at you. But the police thought that I was stalking you and that I had bad intentions, so they arrested me. So that's the bathos. You had me arrested for loving to watch you. That's the bathos. However, look how in this text pun is used, wit is used, and bathos is used, right? So he says, I watched you from afar in the park. You had me arrested. Now, if you look at the word arrest, it means to seize somebody legally. An authority, a person of authority will seize you and take you into custody. So it's rather serious. That's where the bathos comes in. But it's not meant like that. It is meant to be tongue-in-cheek. It's meant to be witty. It's almost meant to be kind of a pickup line for her, because he said, you had me arrested. Who? And I'm impressing you now with my words, right? What he actually means is if you are arrested by somebody, your attention was attracted and you were mesmerized by this person, and I couldn't stop looking. So probably using all of these things in order to impress the other swan. Right, more examples of instances where anticlimax, bathos, pun, and wit are sometimes used together and sometimes apart. Let's see if you can see what we have here. Let's do a little quick check. Marriage is a wonderful institution, but who would want to live in an institution? Can you see that there is an aspect of wit here? So I am being very quick with my answer, right? Somebody might say, oh, we should get married. And, oh, marriage is a wonderful institution, but who wants to live in an institution? So there's a bit of sarcasm there. There is wit there. There is most certainly a pun there on institution. In other words, an institution can be, the institution of marriage, right? or it can be a place, an institution where you have to live, like a correctional facility or something, an institution. So he's playing on the pun there, and he's using wit, and of course there is anticlimax. It is a wonderful institution, but unwanted, right? So the next one, let's see if you can what of which of these aspects that we've talked about are actually used. Let us go to the salad bar. We're starving. So, of course, there's a word play that's most certainly punning. Let us go to the salad bar. Homophone. He has seen the ravages of war. He has known natural catastrophes. He has been to singles bars. Most certainly Bathos, isn't that true? Because this is like the sublime. Oh dear, what he's experienced. All these great and impressive things. He's been to wars and he's seen the ravages of the war. And he's known natural catastrophes. It's huge things. Oh, but he also visited single bars. So Bathos used there to break off the climax and take you to the ridiculous rather than the sublime. That is what we have for you today on these figures of speech based on anticlimax, punning, and so forth. Hope you got to distinguish between all of those.